The council meeting of February 5th will come to order. Good evening. I would ask that all turn off or silence your electronic devices, and if you would please stand to honor God and country. Father God, we pray Temple Terrace be known as a loving city, united in spirit, intent on the purpose to create an environment where people want to live, work, and play. The enemy's goal is to create senseless hurt and distraction. We know that unity puts the enemy promptly in his place. May we on this dais love and serve you, Father God, as well as serve this city willfully, sacrificially, and unconditionally, ultimately imitating you. Amen. Amen. Now the pledge to our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good evening. Persons wishing to address council, there are forms available in the back of the room and may be turned into the clerk to my right. First this evening would ask Susan Robinson of CATCH, which stands for Connecting All Temple Terrace Christian Homeschoolers, to come to the podium. Good evening, Susan. This evening, the mayor and your city council would like to present you with a certificate of recognition, which reads, Certificate of Recognition presented to Connecting All Temple Terrace Christian Homeschoolers in recognition of your volunteer work on October 22, 2018. This hardworking group of students and staff cleaned up a distressed property on North 53rd Street of an elderly resident. We are awarding this recognition on February 5th, 2019. Susan, would you like to say a few words about the Homeschool Association?
I was not prepared for that, but we just wanted to say thank you. It was a privilege for us to be able to have that opportunity, so thank you all.
Thank you.
Wider lens. Wider lens. You may have to stand on a chair in the back of the room.
Stand on your toes, do whatever you need so you can see me. If you can see me, I can see you. Red cheeseburger. All right, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take a couple. Keep looking. Okay, thank
Next, if Tracy Johnson of Firehouse Subs and the Firehouse Subs Foundation, along with Fire Chief Ian Kemp and Captain of Training Joe Cable, would please come to the podium. Tracy, thank you for joining us this evening, and I heard that we are going to be getting a demonstration. First, I would like to present, on behalf of council and myself, the certificate of recognition presented to Tracy Johnson, Firehouse Subs and the Firehouse Subs Foundation, in recognition of your continued support to the Temple Terrace Fire Department. Through the efforts of those mentioned, the Temple Terrace Fire Department received a grant to purchase Hearst battery-operated extrication tools. These state-of-the-art tools will be used in emergency emergencies involving vehicle entrapment, removal of structural obstructions, and technical rescues of all types. This equipment will better assist our firefighters with quick and safe rescue of patients while providing life-saving assistance to those in need. We thank you, Tracy, and would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. I'm very honored that you invited me here today, and it was absolutely my pleasure to work with Joe in getting the grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Following the photo op, we would love a demonstration.
Would you be willing to help?
I heard there was something about fingers being cut off.
Yeah. Now, hope you ate your Wheaties. You got it? Okay. So,
They might not be getting extricated.
my boys generously donated a vehicle for you to work with.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna hold this.
Okay.
You use this.
Okay.
You're right.
I think David wants one.
I was just
very
saying,
excited.
he's drooling.
Take it out.
He's very excited.
All the way. Yep. Keep going. Okay, there you go. Now open it up. You can open it up.
We got them out of there first, right? Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Holy smokes. He'll have it on Saturday.
Drooling.
Some poor kid's Hot Wheel.
Toys. Joe, does he know he donated that? He did? Okay.
Mayor, if I could just say one thing. Tracy and her organization at Firehouse Subs has been a great partner to Temple Terrace Fire Department. This equipment is worth over $25,000. It's equipment that directly affected our budget positively. It's something we were going to be purchasing and needed anyways. And I would ask if anybody is hungry during lunchtime to please stop by and get some Firehouse Subs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Joe. Next, Andrea McClellan is here with M&B Products. If you would please step forward and present the exciting details on the upcoming Farm Night Barbecue.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Stevenson. I am Andrea with M&B Products, and as most of you who have all been there, we are hosting the 4th annual Farm Night Barbecue in Temple Terrace. So this has become a yearly fundraising event for programs in our city. This year's event will be Friday, February 22nd from 6 till 10 p.m. The tickets for adults in advance are $25 and for children are $10. All of the proceeds from the event will go to Temple Terrace Leisure Services, which encompasses the rec center, the library, and the Lightfoot Center. So included in the ticket price is an all-you-can-eat barbecue dinner. This year, in honor of Lupton's 50th anniversary, they will be providing the delicious barbecue for the event.
Thank you, Mr. Lupton, who is sitting in the back.
We will also have all-you-can-eat appetizers, fried green tomatoes, fried okra. We'll have fresh from Florida ice cream, fresh from Florida strawberry shortcake. For the kids, there's tons of events to do. They're making butter, hay rides, there's a bonfire. We have live entertainment. So the opening act is the Southern Express Bluegrass Band. And the main act will be the Boss Hog Band, who actually opened for our main act last year. So we're really excited to host this event for the 4th time. Everything's included in the ticket price except for alcoholic beverages, which are also available, beer and wine. But this event has become just a family-friendly event in Temple Terrace, and all of the proceeds come back to the city. So it's a great Friday night event. Come out, get your belly full, have a good time, let the kids run around and play and have a good time, listen to some good music, and support your community and get to know your neighbors. You know, M&B is an agricultural business here in the city, and we're really just inviting everybody out to come and have a good time, support our city, get to know your neighbors. And we're doing this in conjunction with Hillsborough County Ag Venture. So they're out there supporting the kids groups, giving good education. We have Fresh from Florida, which is the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, is our exclusive title sponsor. This is their third year being our main top sponsor, which is really exciting for this community to have the Department of Agriculture supporting us as well. There's some great sponsors within the community. I don't want to name all of them because I'm bound to forget one, so I'll apologize in advance. But it's just a great event. I encourage everybody to come out and support the event. Tickets can be found on Eventbrite, or you can go to just the website. It's farmnightbbq.com. And again, it is Friday, February 22nd from 6 to 10.
Very good. Thank you. And Dale and Andrea, we are so blessed to have your family in our community and your generous spirits. Thank you very much. Next, if Beth Alden, Executive Director of Hillsborough Metropolitan Planning Organization, would come forward. She will be presenting this evening results and recommendations from the It's Time Tampa Bay. Good evening, Beth.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Council, and hopefully I have a presentation that's queued up and ready to go. If Sean College is here with the Planning Commission, he might be joining me. It was a little crowded in the lobby, so I wasn't totally sure if he made it or not. But this will be just a brief update about the survey that we just completed a couple of months ago to inform the long-range transportation plan and the comprehensive plans. And in the interest of streamlining things for the public and not confusing the public, we wanted to do one survey to inform all of these plans. And this is the first time that we actually did that in conjunction with our neighboring counties of Pinellas and Pasco, including all of the cities in those two counties. So this was a big project. Next slide, please. We did have a record-setting response. Oh, there is a forward. Where do I point it at? Okay. On the side. Thank you. So we did have a record-setting response with this. This is the largest MetroQuest survey result ever for a unit of government smaller than a state. I have a ton of slides in here that we don't need to go through all of the details on. So let's jump to the survey results. Just a disclaimer to start out with, this was not a statistically significant survey, meaning that we did not do random sampling of different parts of the county, but we did track where we got the responses from, and a statistically significant survey would typically be 800 to 1,000 residents of our county. We had 4,000 residents respond to this from our county. In total from the Tri-County area, 9,575 survey responses. We had a really steady participation. And in our county, when you look at our county as a share of the Tri-County area, we were overrepresented. So I feel like we got really good response from our county. We also got very good dispersal from around the county. So the colors here show the number of respondents. The left side of each circle is residents, the right side of each circle is employees. And so you can see those brighter colors show up a lot in our county, including in the Temple Terrace area. So some of the demographic highlights we're showing in these bar charts the 3 different counties and also responses from folks who did not provide us their zip code. That was voluntary. And what's interesting, and you'll kind of see this throughout the slides, is that the responses across the counties tended to be pretty similar. So this particular slide is about income. We did tend to skew a little bit higher than median income with our survey respondents. With our race and ethnicity breakdown, in Hillsborough, we had a little bit of overrepresentation from our Caucasian residents. But it was reasonably close. So what we've done with looking at the demographic breakdown is to actually look at how the responses were different by every demographic sector in our county and also by different geographic areas in our county. So I have lots of detail about that, and I'd be happy to give you more detail if you're interested. But what did the folks say about it? So the first thing we asked them was about their top 5 priorities. The top picks in all 3 counties were traffic jams and alternatives to driving. So you can see that concern about traffic is also paired with, I'd like to find some way to get out of traffic and find another way to get around. The second tier in all 3 counties was open and green space and shorter commutes. And that's interesting because it's kind of a trade-off in a lot of cases. If I want a shorter commute, I might live in the city, maybe I have less access to green space. So these are things that people would like to have both. So we looked at 3 different growth scenarios. I mentioned that we worked together with all of the jurisdictions in this area to come up with growth scenarios. There were 3 different ones. The first scenario, scenario A, was new technologies. That's assuming we continue to grow outward the way we have for a number of decades, and that we rely on automated vehicles and connected vehicle technology to try to address some of our transportation challenges. We had a fairly ambivalent response to this scenario. So we asked folks to rate it the way that you would rate a restaurant in Yelp. So if you give it 4 or 5 stars, you would like to go there. If you give it 1 or 2 stars, you'd really prefer not to go there. So here, the number of stars, 4 and 5 stars, we had kind of an equal number of high star ratings and low star ratings, which is why I'm saying people were kind of ambivalent about this scenario. Scenario B, which was creating a big expressway loop all the way around the Tri-County area. And I-275 through Seminole Heights would be converted to an at-grade boulevard. That got more negative responses than positive responses. And then scenario C was a transit-focused scenario. So rail or bus rapid transit in its own lanes, water ferry, combined with more compact growth, so less sprawling out into green areas. A lot of positive ratings on that one. We did ask folks about the ingredients of the scenarios, and that's what we called the elements, the roadway, transit, community, and funding elements. So, for example, in that outer beltway plus boulevard conversion scenario that I mentioned, maybe folks liked part of it but didn't like the other part. So we wanted to give them the chance to weigh in on that. Looking at this chart will give you an ice cream headache. This shows everything that we asked about. Okay, so roadway elements, the ones with more positive rankings are on the left. The ones with more negative rankings are on the right. So for the roadway elements, we had positive feedback about expanded and new interchange ramps, advanced technology, and elevated toll roads. This varied a little bit from county to county, with generally Pasco being more supportive of toll roads. Looking at our transit elements, these were by far the most popular transportation elements in the survey, with statewide rail, local and regional rail, express bus and BRT, and water ferry all having a lot of positive ratings, those dark purple bars right there. Again, this varied a little bit from county to county, Pasco being a little less supportive of transit. Community elements, again, you can see those big purple bars for preserved neighborhoods, walk and bike focus, more and better downtowns, and efficient land use. The only place where we've got a negative on community elements is expanding our growth area. This variation, again, had Pasco being a little bit more supportive of expanding their growth area. And then our fourth category, the funding elements, not as much positive feeling about increasing funding for transportation, but generally taxes and fees for rail had more positives than negatives, and special district fees also had more positives than negatives. And again, that varied a little bit from county to county, Pasco being more supportive of tolls. So I'm just going to flip through to our recommendations for the comprehensive plan. This is how it breaks out by the different demographic groups. And so you have all of that if you want to dig into the weeds, and I'm happy to meet with you individually if you like that. But big picture, what does this mean for our comprehensive plans and our long-range transportation plan? So as far as growth and land use elements, this suggests that we encourage in our comprehensive plans reinvesting in neighborhoods, strengthening our downtowns, creating some more downtown-like places, such as in suburban communities that maybe grew up without a Main Street feeling kind of place, and minimizing outward growth. For our transportation elements, I've got a couple of slides here on transit. Such strong support for rail of some kind. So how do we include that in the long-range plan? Some options, Bright Line, the rail line from Tampa to Orlando, streetcar extension in downtown Tampa, and now that there is a sales tax passed that gives HART the ability to come back to their previous study of potentially rail or bus rapid transit in dedicated lanes, connecting this area with downtown and the West Shore area. On the roadway side, it was interesting, I think, that elevated express lanes came out with more positives than negatives. So we're suggesting that that continue to be a strategy where we have a lot of traffic in constrained areas. So it might be a strategy for the downtown Tampa interchange, for example. Pasco is also looking at it at the State Route 54, US 41 intersection, maybe creating a separated grade flyover, elevated lanes in that area. We also, since there was some consternation about use of tolls for revenue, making this recommendation, tolls should be used for congestion management rather than for raising revenue. And that gets into your toll setting policy. So, and then finally, on our transportation elements, strong support for walk and bike modes. We need to continue to include and address those. We don't right now have public support for converting I-275 through Seminole Heights into an at-grade boulevard. And with some ambivalence about technology and is that safe? How is that going to get rolled out? That needs to be explored further and demonstrated how that will work. So those are all of the things that are getting carried into the long-range transportation plan, which I hope to talk with you more about in another few months.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Beth, and thank you, Sean, for being here as well. Thank you. Next, item IE, Strategic Advisory Committee appointments. There are 2 vacancies on the Strategic Advisory Committee to the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club. One for a city resident and one as a member of the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club member with financial and/or strategic business experience. The city received 8 applications. All 8 applicants are city residents. They are Joe Affronti, Chris Barquin, Robert Hogan, David Gorlick, Jack Ritter, Tom Zarella, Evangeline Linkos, and Kenneth Lee Koppenhaver. I would ask if the applicants are here and would like to address council. Mr. Pogorelic, if you would like to step forward first.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I'm sure you all remember, not too long ago, I sat in that seat. And during my time there, I was put in charge of being a liaison with the club. At that time, there were some challenges. But we, and I say we because it was we, the club, myself, some citizen volunteers, and the city staff, we all worked together to essentially save the club. There are still some challenges. I sat as the council member on the SAC committee previously. We have worked through a number of issues with the club. The club is marching forward in a positive way. I think my institutional knowledge that I gained while being on that side of the dais and working with the club on a number of different issues, not just keeping the doors open, along with my business acumen and, like I said, my institutional knowledge and my willingness to serve, would go a long way towards continuing my goal of helping the club get to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pogorelic.
Hi, I'm Ken Copenaver, so I'm fairly new to Temple Terrace compared to a lot of people that have applied. I've been here about 4 years, but I actually see that as a benefit because I've had the opportunity to live in Mississippi, Illinois, Louisiana, Indiana, and I've seen a lot of different communities, and I've settled here in Temple Terrace, and I have to say I'm quite happy to be here. I have about 25 years' experience in business. I own my own business right here in Temple Terrace. I'm the only employee that lives here in Temple Terrace, but I have 2 or 3 other people that work for me. I think that having a new person involved in the country club could be a positive. I really would like to see ways that the country club can become involved in all aspects of our community, and how we can all work together to make the club and Temple Terrace a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. Joe Efreni.
Good evening, council members and Ms. Mayor and Charles. I'm Joe Affronti, and I live on River Hills Drive. And I was the former president of the club twice, and I was on the board several times. And also, I served the city as a council member and mayor for 14 years. So I feel I have a pretty good perspective on both what the city needs and what the club needs in order to work together to have a flourishing club, hopefully. So I think I could serve. I've owned my own business for the last 40 years, and we've been fairly successful. And so I would appreciate an opportunity to serve in this capacity to help both the club and the city reach a profitable goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Efreni. I would ask if any of the other applicants are present and would like to address council.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in front of you today, or just briefly introduce myself and qualify my interest for the citizen position for the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club Strategic Advisory Committee. I've lived in Temple Terrace for the last 14 years, started off as a bachelor, bought my first home here, and then got married, and then bought another home. I love this city. I'm very happy to live in it. And, you know, I'm not a club member, but I've had a number of family events there, and certainly I enjoy it as a citizen, given that our city is arranged around it. Just to briefly talk about why I was interested, I mean, I think it's very clear that the club is on the right path. There's been some media about that from, you know, with quotes from the council persons. I find it very interesting from a business perspective as well. You know, it's kind of a convergence of city interests, but also, you know, citizen interest. Even if you're not a member, you can't help but drive through the beautiful course. And I also am very clear on the fact that there are challenges facing golf clubs in the U.S. right now, as demographics have changed, and you know, as real estate desires have changed as well. There were over 200 club closing in 2017 already. So in general, I think that there are circumstances here that make us different. And I really relish the opportunity to kind of bring my background in strategic marketing and operations to bear here if it pleases the council. Regardless, one thing I did want to say, even though this is of personal interest to me, I do intend to serve the city in other ways. So if for some reason I'm not selected tonight, you will see me in some other special interest or committee. So thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye now.
What's your name?
Oh, I did forget that, didn't I? Tom Zarella, and I live on Humber Place, just here in Temple Terrace. Thanks again.
Are there any other applicants who would like to address council? Seeing none, council, a couple of our council members requested, since we have duplicate names on the top and the bottom of the ballot, if you will cut your ballot in half and start with the top of the ballot that is for voting for those that are members of the country club. So if you would start, mark your ballot at the top for who you would select from the country club. We will pass those ballots down, allow our clerk to tally them, and then we will go to the second ballot.
So you're literally cutting it in half?
Literally.
Okay.
You want to sign the top half, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have one more coming, sir. Council, as the top applicant for the motion to approve, I would ask you to approve the appointment of David Pogorelic to the Strategic Advisory Committee as the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club with financial or strategic business expertise appointee. Do we have,
So moved.
we have a motion, a second, any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, motion carries. The second ballot, the only name that will be removed from that ballot will be Mr. Pogorelic, as he has already been appointed, and you are now voting for one of the remaining 7 citizens. And thank each and every one of you who have applied to serve in this capacity. Thank you, council. As the top applicant, would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Joseph Affronti to the Strategic Advisory Committee as the city resident. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion, is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen, and thank you for your commitment to service in our city. Next, Riverwatch Task Force appointments. There are 2 vacancies on the Riverwatch Task Force, one expiring February 2nd, 2021, one expiring February 6th, 2021. The city has received 2 applications from Susan Drenberg and Paul Ford. Are the applicants present? Would you like to address council? Thank you, Ms. Drenberg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Susan Drenberg, and I live at 805 Gascon Place and here in Temple Terrace. As you know, I've been really involved in the cleanup of our river, our area here in Temple Terrace. And with that, I'd like to be voted on to the Citizens Board of the Task Force, and I think I can do a good job, and it's kind of something I'm really, really, really passionate about. So I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I would just ask, is Mr. Ford here?
I don't see him.
Okay. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Susan Drenberg to the Riverwatch Task Force for a term extending from February 5, 2019 until February 2nd, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
To approve? I have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick comment. I'd just like to let the public know that I know both of these individuals, and we are very, very lucky to have both of them stepping up to the plate here to serve the city. We have a lot of citizen volunteers. These are 2 really, really good people. They're going to bring a lot of value to the Riverwatch Task Force, and thank you very much.
All in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Congratulations, Susan. Next, would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Paul Ford to the Riverwatch Task Force for a term extending from February 5, 2019 until February 6, 2021. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Congratulations. Next, item 1G, MPO Citizens Advisory Committee appointment. There is a vacancy on the MPO Citizens Advisory Committee. The city received 2 applicants, one from David Pogorelic and one from Pastor Moses Brown. Would the candidates like to address council? And I'm sorry, there is a third person. It must have been a late entry into the field, Evangeline Linkos. Are any of the applicants here who would like to address council? Mr. Pegorelic.
Good evening, David Pegorelic, River Hills Drive, Temple Terrace. Here again, I have served on the MPO previously, 9 years ago now, 10 years ago. I would love the opportunity to serve again. I have said time and time again that what makes Temple Terrace amazing is our volunteerism. And I'd like to continue to help the city grow in a positive way and not just sit back and complain. I want to get out there and do some positive things, and this is one way that I can surely help. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Are there any other candidates here, applicants here? Yes, please step forward.
Good evening, council members. My name is Evangeline Linkus. I'm an assistant professor of urban and regional planning at USF. I have a long history of working in the planning field and am very passionate about urban planning. Land use and transportation connections are my area of expertise in urban planning. So obviously, I feel like the MPO position would be a really great fit for my background professionally. It combines my residency in Temple Terrace. I've lived here for 6.5 years. My husband's family grew up here. I have a lot of family in the area. I'm very passionate about Temple Terrace, and I'd like to contribute beyond my academic role and bring that expertise to the community. I am involved in several ways in planning in the community, primarily through my community engagement work. As an instructor, as a professor at USF, I won the USF Community Engaged Teaching Award. Numerous students in my program are working at the MPO as interns or have graduated and have roles there. So I do have relationships there. And I'm very active with the APA, the American Planning Association local chapter. So I feel like this would complement the already strong interest that I have. I do also have experience excuse me, where I previously lived in Pennsylvania. I was on the Planning Commission, so I have a longstanding commitment to serving in local leadership roles. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is Pastor Moses Brown here this evening? Council, I would ask you to please mark your ballot for your top candidate for the MPO Citizens Advisory Committee and pass your ballots to the city clerk. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Evangeline Lucas to the MPO Citizens Advisory Committee for a term extending from February 5th, 2019 until February 5th, 2021.
I move to approve the appointment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Congratulations. If the minutes of the January 15th, 2019 City Council meeting are acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion around the minutes?
Mayor, I found a typo. On the very last page, city manager mentioned that the city had paid $3.3 million towards a Republic Bank note, which reduced the city should-be obligation on a monthly basis. It's another word. Yep.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Minutes stand approved. Persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. A 3-minute time limit will be imposed on all comments from the public. Individual members of the public who are present in the audience may designate in writing a representative to speak on their behalf, not extending beyond 10 minutes. As speakers come to the podium, please state your name and city of residence. During public comment on items not on the agenda, the city manager and directors in attendance do make note of these items. During the city manager's report later in the agenda, Mr. Stevenson may make a comment related on those items related to city business, and where further research is necessary, he or staff he assigns will follow up. Nathan Redmond.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. Just wanted to take a moment just to update. Last week, last meeting, I came in and updated on the stormwater education grant, and I left out one thing because I wasn't sure that all the items would come in, but I wanted to give an update. So I've ordered a lot of the items that we had talked about in the last meeting. They've come in. Our table is going to be a go. I have signed up with the city to sit at Touch a Truck. We'll have the table out there, so please come by and stop. It's going to be a great time. Okay, if I run out of things to talk about when it comes to stormwater, I'll tell you some war stories. I've got a bunch of those too. Okay, other than that, I just want to take a moment just to thank you all for doing the 2 appointments tonight, because that is going to make our board that much stronger. We were needing them, and I believe both of them are great appointees, and I appreciate you all doing that. But come out, support us at Touch a Truck, come up to the table, have a great time. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond. Don Balaban.
Good evening, Mayor, council people. My name is Don Balaban. I live at 9410 Allenbrook Street. I've lived here 33 years. Still love the community. Been coming to the meetings forever. I wanted to talk about several things tonight. First off is permit fees. You all doing a great job getting Temple Terrace back on track financially and everything. And I think we need to look at those fees down the line. And it's becoming cumbersome for a lot of us that've lived here forever. Your air conditioner goes out, your fence falls down, you have everything on file. We pull permits before our surveys are on file, and they're charging $75 to $95 for a permit to put a fence back up if it's more than 2 sections. When you go out in the county, you can pretty much do anything. I just had to replace my air conditioner, and it was $75 or $95. And it's not just that, it's the convenience of having to do all that, and I'm sure you all ain't making much money off it because the inspector has to come back out and everything. I mean, there should be a ways where we can fax you our air conditioner guys' license, insurance, whatever, and, you know, if you start getting negative reports on them, then you can, you know, start going out and inspecting to see if they are, you know, if they're doing a good job or not. But, you know, it would be based on us anyway, as the homeowner and the payer, to be watching that it's our responsibility to hire a licensed technician, make sure the job's done right. But I can see paying something, but it's ridiculous that I gotta pay the same fee as someone putting a new air conditioner in when I'm replacing it. Same thing with a fence. Like I said, the survey's on file, everything else. That's something we need to look at. And the other thing, I'm here again to tell you, I'd love to see a Home Depot or a Walmart. We're the largest incorporated community, I think, left in the state of Florida with none. And now I have to pack a suitcase to go to Brandon, to go Home Depot or New Tampa. It's getting ridiculous. And, you know, I never thought 30 years later we still don't have a Walmart or Home Depot. And you all know how hard I tried. So anyway, we got to do it before all this land's going around here. And the only other thing I have is I want to comment, and I hope the news media is picking up on this, that the mayor and the councilman, you're doing a fantastic job. I've been here 33 years. The police chief at fire department, I don't have a complaint. We're blessed to have you all, and I like to see that hit the paper. And if it doesn't, maybe they need to go up to Virginia and worry about someone, a governor that put on his yearbook about a KKK guy and a man painting his face black. To me, that's more important if you're going to paint a negative light on Temple Terrace and our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Barnhill?
Good evening, Council. My name is Greg Barnhill. I live at 219 South Glenarvan Avenue. I thank you for your time this evening. I would like to propose that the city of Temple Terrace revisit a tradition that had happened within the city in years past, which is placing banners along 56th Street, which will create a sense of place for the community and also act as an opportunity for us to advertise the traditions we've had in the community and the new events that are happening within our area. So as I travel the Tri-County area and beyond, I see these same types of banners being used to create a sense and to note key community events taking place there. I think that it's a very easy opportunity for us to show everyone else what we're doing as a city and making the efforts not only for community, but to provide the activities that are happening in the area. As you drive down 56, you can actually see the previous efforts from the Chamber of Commerce when they were putting the banners up before. So a lot of the equipment that is needed is actually already in place. I have spoken with TECO. They don't have any issues in moving forward and using the poles as in years past. They just ask that we work through the proper channels to make that happen and be aware of it from a safety aspect. Also, in moving in that same direction and looking at banners, I'd like to see us revisit the opportunity for having holiday decorations, be them lit or not, put up during the season as the holiday requires. So then I'd like to see what our next steps would be as a community to make these events happen. So thank you for your time and attention to this request.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
May I interject something? Thank you, Mr. Barnhill. We had some conversation about Christmas decorations around budget time. We have reached out to TECO. TECO, I don't know who Mr. Barnhill has spoken with, but we've reached out to our liaison with TECO, Mr. Denham, and he was informing me that TECO no longer allows the city to put banners up on their poles. So I'll try to get some clarification on that. Mr. Barnhill, if you can tell me who you spoke to at TECO, that would be great.
I've been working with their Facebook page.
Okay.
I've been working with their Facebook page.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I'll reach back out to Mr. Denham and see if we can get some clarification.
Thank you.
It was the Merchants Association.
Yeah, and TECO, for liability reasons, quit putting banners up. But again, that's the information that we got. We did check into purchasing some Christmas decorations, at least for the redevelopment, Main Street. Hopefully, we can swing that here this year with some budget money. But to my knowledge, TECO would not be very receptive to putting up banners along 56th Street. So,
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
Not to override your conversation with them, but they have precedent in many areas of town.
I'll reach out to TECO. If we can do it, that'd be great. Okay? Thank you.
Next comment, Mr. Jack Ritter.
Looks like we have a full house. Jack Ritter, 227 Willowwick Avenue, City of Temple Terrace. Been a resident for 73 years. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and senior city staff. I'm going to read this since I've about to lose my voice. At your 18 December meeting, I spoke about a breach of employment contract for one of our 3 exempt employees. This breach involves the residency requirement of the contract. This purported breach has gone on for approximately 10 months. More to the point on residency is the fact that this individual maintains a homestead in Pinellas County and further voted on 16 October 2018 in Pinellas County. These facts have been verified by me and others. To date, I've heard nothing officially as to how this council plans to address or handle this issue. At your inauguration, first term or re-elected individuals, each of you took an oath of office, which you swore to uphold the city charter, ordinances, laws, and rules. If you have a problem with such requirements, individually or collectively, you have a bully pulpit in which to initiate change. In short, you simply cannot overlook a breach of contract for a direct report employee. I believe all know who I am referring to. If this person knew, assuming that the person was aware of the contractual requirement, that for reasons not known here, that to meet the requirement was impossible, it seems that this person would have sought forbearance or an extension or even rescission of the residency requirement. To my knowledge, none of this has occurred. In short, this is your chief legal officer who is playing the city like a fiddle with regard to the requirement for residency. With this breach in mind, how can you, our elected officials, rely on advice and guidance she provides? It is time to stop this charade and institute some form of sanction for the breach, or go full in and vote for termination for cause. Thank you.
Allison Fernandez.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Allison Fernandez, 6601 Heatherton Court. I'm actually here for two reasons tonight. The first is I wanted, and this will probably come up at some point in your meeting, but I wanted to let you all know that there is a meeting at Greco Middle School on February 12th at 6 p.m. in the cafeteria, and it's regarding discussing changing the boundaries for that school. As a city resident, active on council and school issues and the school support committee in years past, we've actually been asking the school district to enact this change for, I think, over 8 years. So on the 12th, and I wanted to let you all know in a public venue because it is such short notice. On the 12th, there will be a meeting to discuss this potential boundary change. It sounded very positive that the district would move forward with the plan to change Greco's boundary so that all Temple Terrace residents in middle school age would be assigned to Greco and not to Jennings, as some of them are now. This doesn't change anybody's choice options. It just means that would be your assigned school. So I'm asking you to please plan to come to the meeting and ask questions and get information. The other thing that we're going to be talking about in that meeting, hopefully, we'll have some information about how our new principal plans to go forward and what changes he envisions for the school and the district envisioned for the school. And this would be a great opportunity for the public to ask questions and give input and let the school district know what we as a community are looking for in especially this middle school. And then segueing into that, we as a Greco Middle School volunteer are always looking for volunteers and community involvement. So one of the things that our PTA has come up with is a bicycle treasure hunt, scavenger hunt through the city of Temple Terrace. And we think this is going to be an excellent family event. We think that this will be an excellent community event. And we're looking for all of you to participate April 28th, which is a Sunday, but it's Sunday afternoon from 1 to 5. And for those of you that remember Sam Lougheed, this was always a plan and a dream of his to have an event like this for Temple Terrace. And he was unable to have that happen before he left. And those of you know he was very active in the Temple Terrace community and bicycles especially. So, and also a former Greco student. So we'd like to honor his memory through this event, through this community event, doing something that he really, really felt passionate about. And we hope that you all will come and support Greco PTA, Greco Middle School, and enjoy the community activity. We have a couple of fun things planned. One of them, you know, the orange is our symbol, and we're planning to hide some oranges out on the course somewhere. And the other thing is we're going to have people, before they leave, paint on rocks. And then you get to hide your rock wherever you want along the course. And it'll be a fun family event. So I encourage you all, we have a website. You can get to it from our Greco site or the Trek site. It's called Trek for Treasure, April 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzette Feinstein.
My name is Suzette Feinstein, and I've lived at 10909 Victoria Arbor Way for 30 years. I'm also known as Suzette Milana, PhD, licensed psychologist. I've been watching as the situation regarding the mayor's fraudulent credentials evolved over the last several months, and I'm gratified that the Florida Department of Health took steps to prevent the mayor from continuing to use the title of psychologist illegally, cited and fined her. I've been waiting for the mayor and city council to address the issue appropriately as well, and I don't understand the silence. I had expected the mayor to acknowledge wrongdoing when it was disclosed that her credentials were not valid, but week after week goes by and she says nothing, acting as if no one has spoken. In fact, as recently as December 31st, she was seen on WFLA stating that, quote, to her knowledge, end quote, her PhD was from an accredited university, even though she's clearly aware that it is not, and everyone else in the city is aware that it is not. She won't admit to the truth even as public knowledge, even as it becomes public knowledge, which speaks to her lack of credibility as mayor of Temple Terrace. The time for appropriate explanations or apologies is past. I join the increasing number of city residents who believe the mayor should resign. I'd also like to say that the silence from the city council is deafening. Could someone please explain to the public why no one has addressed this issue in spite of repeated objections and questions from the public? Is there some rule that you act in unison, or that you're not allowed to speak your own minds? Or to pretend as if none of us are speaking, or that there is no problem? Do you collectively not care that someone run for office using false credentials? The city residents have a right to know how the city council members stand on this issue. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to interject something here. It's very atypical for the city manager to address council at the 3-minute. But I tell you, in anticipation of all this nonsense coming up again, I'd like to be able to have the floor and interject something here to this discussion, please. If that's okay with council and the mayor. You know, we've continually, under 3 minutes, allowed various subjects, and some being relevant, some not, into persons wishing to be heard on on items not on the agenda. I'd like to remind council that the purpose of our bi-monthly meetings is for conducting city business that's relevant to moving this city forward. I will also like to remind the sitting members of council of our adopted rules and procedures, in particular Rule 16C, which I would like to read into the record. Madam Mayor, this is getting just a little bit out of hand, and I think that if you'd bear with me, you'll see where I'm going with this. Rule 16C, that is adopted rules and procedures of this council, says council members shall be courteous to each other, to city employees, and to the public. Council members shall refrain from rude, derogatory remarks, reflections, abusive comments, and statements related to motive, personality, or integrity. I will say, quote unquote, the public shall also observe the same rules of conduct. 16D says that all remarks will be addressed to the entire council and not to individual council members. I would assume that that includes the mayor. We continue hearing inaccurate information and innuendo as we allow the public to come to the podium, expecting some constructive criticism and value-added conversation that actually help this council and its administration move the city forward. The continued attack on this body and administration, and me in particular sometimes as well, is unnecessary, unfounded, it's destructive, it is hateful, and it's a ridiculous exercise that we put this community through. The attack on one's integrity and person flies in the face of the rules of this body. Every week, we invite our directors to sit in the audience. I've got 12 directors out here, 12-plus directors, to be part of the discussions and decisions of this council. They have worked very hard for the past couple of years to do what's right and to provide quality professional services to this community, only to have to sit through a lot of this nonsense and hateful rhetoric and destructive criticism spewed by a few distractors in this community. I am certain they are engaged while in attendance, but I am not confident that they enjoy attending because of what they must sit and listen to and endure while we go through an hour worth of nonsense. I am certain, with certainty, can tell council that with no doubt they'd rather be home with their families than sitting through this constant non-value, destructive opinions. Madam Mayor, I call on this body from here on out to address the rude and hateful behavior There are a few in this community who feel entitled to continue to perpetuate hateful and destructive behavior on this body and the administration, and in particular you. I ask the council take a stand to eliminate bad behavior, lies, and personal attacks, live up to our adopted rules and procedures during what's supposed to be a business meeting for this city. This does not help us conduct business. I've had this conversation with each of you in the past concerning the demeanor. Each of you have told me that you are not in support of all this nonsense that we got going on, and I'd like for it to be addressed this evening with some conversation. The young lady that was just up here wanted some council intervention. I think this is the time to do it. I think this council needs to understand the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is not to hear people come up here and attack anybody. That doesn't help anything that we're trying to do in this city, and we're moving the city forward. Madam Mayor, I understand from an earlier conversation that you've had, you got some information to present in rebuttal to recent attacks on yourself. Also understand that there's a retired expert from USF whose responsibilities included the review of dissertation of doctorate candidates and has developed her own opinion that I think council needs to hear on the controversies that we've been dealing with. With your permission, Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask Dr. Susan McMillan to come up forward.
Excuse me, but this is inappropriate. You cannot silence the citizens. Okay?
I would like to ask Madam Mayor, Susan McMillan to come forward
Point of order.
and share with council and the audience comments she would like to share concerning your doctorate situation. I do think this needs to be put to bed. I do think that you have indicated to me that you are prepared to address this head-on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Will the city council members please speak up about this?
I'm Susan McMillan. I've lived in Temple Terrace since 1979. The title of the dissertation written by Dr. Gerardo is Measuring Program Outcomes and Evaluation Process Improvement Plan for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Tampa Bay Incorporated. I was asked to review this dissertation because Dr. Gerardo's qualifications have been called into question and because I'm a recently retired distinguished professor from the University of South Florida. In that role, I served on 43 PhD dissertation committees and chaired most of them. While my specialty is nursing and not developmental psychology, the project is a program evaluation, something with which I'm very familiar. My PhD is in measurement and evaluation, and I have served as project evaluator for numerous funded projects. In fact, I'm currently on two as evaluator, one at Indiana University and one at University of Utah. Thus, while I'm not a content expert, I do have sufficient expertise to judge many aspects of this dissertation. This dissertation was written in the style that is common among dissertations with 5 chapters. The first is the introduction, the second is the review of literature, which was about 165 pages. The third is the study methods, which included the 3 phases and instrument development. The fourth presented results very succinctly with tables included, and the fifth summarized this lengthy project. While the dissertation has many strengths, it also has some weaknesses, so I will begin with those. First, the statistical results that are presented in Chapter 4 are primarily means with no standard deviations included. And while she comments that the parent and child scores are highly related, she does not present any correlations. Given that this is an evaluation project designed for consumers at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Tampa Incorporated, who are not research scientists, this presentation of results may be completely appropriate. This evaluation project was a very ambitious, multi-phase study that could easily have been 2 full dissertations. Had she been in closer proximity to her faculty advisors, she doubtless would have been advised to scale the project back significantly. As it is, the project is more than 400 pages in length and has more than 200 citations in the reference list. I'll review each chapter separately. Chapter 1, the introduction, sets the stage for this 3-phase evaluation project. Dr. Gerardo writes clearly, if not succinctly, and covers all the appropriate topical areas. She uses 32 references in the introduction. The style required footnotes rather than APA or AMA style manual approaches. Thus, there were nearly 400 footnotes in the paper, which surely was onerous to write. Chapter 2. This 165-page chapter reviewed literature primarily in the areas of child development, self-esteem, and educational psychology, areas in which I'm not an expert. However, they seemed appropriate for the background of this study. Chapter 3, this was a very ambitious multi-phase evaluation project that could have been multiple studies. This complexity is very likely a result of working with staff at the target organization, which was the Boys and Girls Clubs of Tampa Incorporated, and attempting to meet their needs. While a generous response to her on her part, Dr. Jurado did much more work than most doctoral programs would have required. Chapter 4, results were presented in this chapter. Results followed her proposed methods and addressed the aims stated in Chapter 1. Chapter 5, this was the summary, conclusions, and recommendations for the study and led the way into the phase in which the staff of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Tampa Incorporated can proceed into ongoing evaluation of their very large and complex program. In summary, Dr. Mel Jurado did, in fact, complete a lengthy and appropriate doctoral dissertation as part of her doctoral studies. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Stevenson, council members, the request has been for me to make a statement. I will make a statement now. We will then go back to public comment. It's a great honor to serve our community. I strive to make a positive impact each and every day. Here's my account of what's been happening, and I'd like to set the record straight with the facts regarding my educational path. This is not a case of an education that did not happen. As a person in the workforce in 1994, I evaluated several options to further educational opportunities. I pursued a viable and legitimate option. I completed the coursework, I conducted the research, I wrote a 461-page dissertation and was awarded my hard-earned degree. I never, ever considered this a shortcut to a PhD. Sometime after that, the institution closed. The status of the school at the time I attended has been brought into question. At no time was I ever enrolled in a school or a course of study that was illegal. I have been provided this documentation by a current sitting Chief Justice from the Third Circuit Court, who found and has reviewed the 1994 Circuit Court ruling on the school, noting LaSalle was a legally operating institution with full authority to grant diplomas. This legal ruling still stands and has not been challenged or overturned. In addition, over the past several months, as you have just heard, my dissertation has received multiple third-party verifications. Thank you, Dr. McMillan, for being here this evening. Again, this is a woman with a storied career, 43 PhD dissertations, the majority that she chaired as a committee member. Thank you very much for what you stood up and said today. There has been no dispute about my master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology awarded in 1983. Unfortunately, there was a challenge in the registrar's office in reporting on my second course of study. It was, in fact, the Applied Life Sciences College, also referred to as SPORT, sports psychology, physical education, sports medicine, exercise physiology, now referred to as kinesiology. Yes, there have been a few name changes over 35 years. This was actually my primary area of study. Records have been recorded demonstrating this is the department that accepted me to the University of Illinois graduate program. This is the department that paid my tuition the entire time I was at the University of Illinois. This is the department that employed me as a teaching assistant while I was at the University of Illinois. They provided my office space. This is the department that provided the subjects and where research was conducted, leading to my master's thesis, motivation to continue physical activity in a third phase cardiac rehab program. I continue to work to uncover all records. When that course of study was complete, I was immediately recruited to enter into their PhD program. I commenced that research work in the summer of 1983. This was prior to me choosing a Florida relocation and a marriage proposal from my now husband of 35 years. My undergraduate studies were completed at Kent State University. And I will share, while my education is important to me, I'm thankful I live in a city where even an undergrad degree is not a prerequisite to holding office. Finally, and this is not for the media or the few agitators, but for those who know, love, and support me and this city. I was burdened by the headline, Mayor Breaks Law. Temple Terrace instigators filed an allegation with the Department of Health. I was informed by the local office that I could probably prevail if I took the day and a half to go to Tallahassee and expend money for a hearing. I chose to pay a citation, just as some might do when faced with a traffic citation. The matter was resolved in under 15 minutes. On December 13, I quote, "The matter is now closed effective today," end quote. It referred to a code that has not always existed. I am an IO practitioner. I am not a clinician. I do not have, nor have I ever had, patients. I provide training and development activities for businesses. The Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychologists has taken a stand, and I quote, "The work and research activities of IO psychologists are not unique to this discipline and do not pose a threat of harm to the public and are not subject to licensure. They are not clinicians. They do not have patients. The vast majority are trainers and consultants in business settings," end quote. This said, the one change necessary to be in full compliance with the law has been made. Those who asked me to consider running for office did not do so based on my academic background. It was due to 25 years of committed service and demonstrated love of this city. I am thankful for the faith others have shown in me, and I'm grateful to serve this community. I did not lie. I did not deceive. My hands are clean. My head is clear. And even now, my conscience is quiet. My $293 a month job with the city is not near as important as the service to the city I love. I do not plan to resign, and I look forward to continuing to serve our amazing city. I will not divert further time to this issue. There's important work to be done in this city, and in less than 2 years' time, citizens will determine if they want to retire or rehire my service. It hurts my heart that any implication of how I handle my life, my career, or this position would hurt my Christian witness and take away from the positive movement in this city over the last 15 months. I ran on a platform of enough yaption. It's time for action. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to focus on the positive things taking place in our city. Better than a decades-long drought with no action in redevelopment has been answered with action. 3 deals. Last month, $3.3 million was paid by the first of our developers. That money went to pay down the loan owed by the city, freeing up an additional $11,000 each month, no longer being paid on interest. The country club and city financial issues have been resolved, and the club has secured excellent leadership that's making fantastic strides, a key crown jewel in our city restored. We were able to strongly and forcefully take a stand against the discussion of a flyover on Fowler that would have hurt businesses on that corridor and negatively impacted citizens residing in that immediate area. Code sweeps have increased to ensure a safer and a cleaner city. The rec center reservations are well underway. The River Boardwalk has been redone. A Mayor's Youth Leadership Council was established to engage youth leaders in projects that positively impact our community. This group, in a short 6 months, has already served as city ambassadors at several functions, developed a video highlighting all the great elements of our city, been awarded the Florida League of Mayors City Catalyst Grant, and selected as their legacy project for the year, building a library within the new Temple Terrace Boys and Girls Club. An intentional focus on schools is underway. In addition to the work of our Schools Support Committee, your mayor and city manager have met with principals, hosted principal roundtables, and visited schools. I have personally visited, spoken, or volunteered at every single one of our schools in Temple Terrace. Work with the business leaders group is underway to continue to support the work of city staff on driving positive economic development. Just this past week, City Manager Stevenson and I had meetings with both our state representative and our state senator, both of them pledging legislatively to address the city of Temple Terrace's ability to regain control of our river. Additionally, we engaged in discussions around funding better emergency facilities for our first responders. This past Friday, your mayor and city manager met with School Superintendent Akins to bring to a close better than a decade-long challenge of Temple Terrace children being zoned away from our middle school. Many of these activities represent a council and excellent city staff working together, and that's what we're called to do. The deliberate approach from this dais has been to adhere to the commitments made during our strategic planning sessions. That's what citizens deserve from this body. The focus has been and will continue to be positive action and results. One final note, City Manager Stevenson. My credentials were changed by a well-meaning city staffer to appease a media detractor. The proof has been presented, and I would ask that this be corrected. And now, let's get back to city business. Mike Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name's Mike Hansen. I'm not a City of Temple Terrace resident. However, I have spent most of my adult life helping the children of Temple Terrace. This mayor is who we need. She spends every day helping the children. The nonsense that we've heard and here in the media is just that, nonsense. The proof is now there. As they say, the proof is in the pudding. The pudding is out there. We need to support this mayor the rest of the time that she's on this board and her next term. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Jim Butane?
Jim Butine, Temple Terrace. I've lived in the city for 30 years. My original comments this evening will not be said. Instead, I'd like to congratulate this body. Yes, wonderful things have been done in this city. Yes, people have done some wonderful things. But you're doing a great job of shutting citizens down for their voice. And you may be able to micromanage the city, but you cannot micromanage the citizens.
Adeline Verona.
Despite the attempt to silence our citizens by someone who actually doesn't live in Temple Terrace and by someone who has shown no evidence despite her very majestic speech, I will address the issue of your fraud. And Mayor, you are a fraud. You've shown no evidence. The FBI raided that institution, and it's in your PhD is fraudulent. Do you have something to say, sir? Because I am a citizen of this city, unlike you. Anyway, the point is that.
I'd like to say that.
And you're
rude to these representatives. And out of order.
I am not out of order. I'm a citizen like you
Point of
are.
order. Point of order.
Are you shutting them down like you did me?
Point of order.
Anyway, the point is that your PhD is fraudulent, and you've lied, and you've obtained money from the government based on fraudulent credentials. And you have been fined for using the term psychologist when it can only be used if you're a PhD, not only licensed, okay? And that's facts. You, lady, are completely out of order in your way of lying to the public. You don't want to listen to me? I'm your citizen. And so many good things have happened that people are still complaining about the fact that all we get in Temple Terrace are storage facilities, smoke shops, and banks. And that's what you got in your great redevelopment plan. There is so much that you guys are doing that is so corrupt. You have people who used to be council members voted on every single committee. The same people all the time, and new blood isn't put in there. Mr. Chalura has a property that was a mess for 2 years and never got cited because there's a special list that they don't cite city council members. Now I saw you sold it to the bank that is actually holding the loan to our city. So there's a lot of stuff here that doesn't get spoken, and you guys are actually making sure that we leave this city, that honest people leave this city because of all the lies.
Mr. Alan Greer.
Well, you never know who you're going to follow, so usually I have a lack for words, but give me just a second to gather myself after that. I think next time I would just encourage you, and maybe encourage all of us, to actually stand up and say, I thought the rules were that we weren't supposed to be making derogatory remarks and rude remarks and those other adjectives to the people involved in the process. But then you just read it, the rules, but yet it just happened. Hopefully that won't happen again. If it does, that person can't continue to speak. That's how I feel. So anyway, I'm one of those many, many people, most of us, that are so proud of our Temple Terrace mayor. She's such a great leader and motivator and role model, and we support her 100%. And I don't know any reason why you're not eminently qualified. In fact, you're much more qualified than an average mayor. That's a fact. And I tried to get informed of the situation, of the facts that have been talked about tonight, of your credentials and so forth and so on, and I don't see a problem. Maybe I'm not smart enough, but I don't see one. And so anyway, I look forward to your great leadership going forward and voting for you in the next election. Thank you so much for your great work so far.
Sharon Graham. Sharon Graham.
Good evening to you, Mayor and City Council, and City Manager, City Attorney, Madam Clerk. My name is Sharon Graham, and I live in Temple Terrace. I'm here this evening as a concerned citizen. I'm a healthcare worker, and I did vote for the mayor. And having recently learned that Ms. Gerardo was fined, and that she paid the fine, I am deeply saddened and concerned. I do think that this is a serious ethical issue. And I think that can be addressed and also can be investigated, looked at, dealt with, apart from any sort of personal attack, on one, but the, actions are separate from individuals. We know that. So I don't mean this as an attack personally to you. However, I do maintain that I believe that this is an ethical issue that should be addressed. And the misrepresentation of one's credentials is obviously against state statute. And so that's where the citation came from. And it being paid, I think that is something that we can look at and validly address, without demeaning one's person themselves. So I would just like us to frame it in that way. Having said that, I do believe that the representation of one's credentials is a fundamental thing, and one that is, very closely tied with trust. And it doesn't bring me joy to say this, but, having voted for you, I don't feel that I'm able to trust your representation of what goes on with the city business. So I want to say that, and my personal feeling is that you should resign. Thank you.
Adele Jundy.
Good evening. My name is Hadil Jundi. I have been a resident of Temple Terrace along with my family for almost 11 years now. I don't usually speak at these meetings, and I do keep current, and you totally messed up my speech because you spoke, and I think that's what everybody has been waiting for, so I commend you for doing that. I also commend the work you've done with the youth in the city, and obviously your hearts are all in it because you don't do it for the pay. Chose to speak today because I waited months in hopes that you would address the negative publicity that has been drawn to the city since you've become mayor. We're not arguing about you being a good person or bad person, but I do feel that there's a bias and a prejudice that runs through this city. If you all remember, Wael Oda ran for city council, and there was an anonymous letter sent out that was full of hate to many of the citizens. The claims and assumptions in the letter were silly and irrelevant, but despite the fact, he addressed it, not because the citizens asked him to, not because anyone was complaining. On the contrary, this actually bought him a lot of more sympathy and support. I mentioned Mr. Oda because of two things. One being is that he addressed his citizens based on assumptions, whereas you have shown little or no remorse towards the factual evidence that you've been represented. This is an obvious prejudice, a privilege, and if Mr. Oda were to be on that platform and so much as forget to mow his lawn, the same people who don't give a damn about your degree or don't care if you need one to be mayor, which is true, would demand a resignation from him and any other person that were up there who would be of color or any ethnicity if they were on that platform. It wouldn't be swept under the rug as fast as this has. At this point, it seems that you have too much pride to resign and too little remorse to have addressed it sooner, but you did tonight, and I do commend you for that. And I do believe that we're all human at the end of the day. And I feel bad for everything that you've had to face through this as a woman, as the publicity. I truly, truly feel bad for you because I couldn't have handled it myself. But all the people wanted was you to speak, and it would have softened the hearts of many months and months ago. I know for me tonight, hearing you speak made me feel that much better, and half my speech just went out the window. So thank you all for your time, and I appreciate it.
If I could just have a brief moment of privilege, City Manager Stevenson. There are those who immediately wanted me to rant and rage, as some of you have chosen to do. There is nothing in my being that believes a leader should rant and rage. What was purported in the paper, in the media, I knew was not true. I know who I am and I know whose I am. But I knew some of you would have no interest in hearing that. I received word from the Chief Justice on January 16th. That was one day after our last meeting. I have worked arduously to get records from 35 years ago, before the internet, before things were put on screen. I've invested thousands of dollars to get the proof and the evidence. Asking someone, the city, finding someone with the credentials and the background to review a dissertation of 461 pages is not done overnight. So as much in going forward, if any of you expect me to react and rant and rage and malign and belittle and hit below the belt when I'm hit below the belt, I don't have the luxury of doing that. one because of this position, but more because of my Christian faith. You wanted to see me get ugly. I don't think I have the luxury of doing that and having the privilege of serving as the leader of this city. I needed to have the evidence in place so the maligners and the detractors might finally be silenced. Nicole Ford.
I'm Dr. Nicole Ford, and I have a couple of issues that I'd like to address. Number one, I want to address the mayor's behavior on the December 4th, I believe, meeting. I wasn't here, but I always watch these meetings when I can't make it on YouTube, and I'm grateful that the city puts them on YouTube. And I noted that Sherry was dropped from the Heart Board without anybody talking to her beforehand, and it was sort of came as a shock to her. And I was also shocked that nobody stood up for her, and it seemed that she was sort of ambushed. I think that happened on the 4th meeting. Anyway, so I was just very shocked that had happened, and I was very disappointed. So I just wanted to just sort of put that out there. Sherry had won 30% of the vote, and I just thought that she deserved a little bit more respect than that. Okay, another thing that I wanted to bring up was, obviously we all saw the WFLA thing. And, you know, a PhD is not something that I know, because I have one and other people here in this audience have one, that you defend among a group of people in the community, okay? Or that some 30 years later, you conjure up somebody from a local university, okay, and have them review it and say whether or not it's okay, okay, and it meets some standard when they're not even in the field of psychology. It doesn't work that way. Her dissertation should be available. Right now, I'm doing a review of dissertations for a peer-reviewed article that goes back, literally, ironically, past 1996, all the way to the 1990s, 1992, to the fall of the USSR, because Russia is my area of specialty. And I can find them online. You won't be able to find the mayors online. That's because she is not a legitimate PhD. If you are a legitimate PhD, you will find your dissertation online, at the very least, a notation that it exists. No such notation of the mayor's existence of a PhD exists. Therefore, her PhD is not legitimate in the eyes of anybody in the academic community. Okay? So, it might, I'd be very interested to see what this federal judge might be claiming. Okay, and I await that. However, I'm sure in the field of psychology, nobody would take that as having any sort of meaning or worth. The other thing I wanted to mention was in the last city council meeting, everybody was up in arms over these issues of lien reductions and what a dangerous precedent that it was going to set
for some hardworking people who have fallen on hard times. There are some people right now in our community who are, going through hard times financially, and because of a limb in their yard, their liens have gone up to thousands of dollars because they can't afford to pay them. And I'd like to take this moment to thank Mr. Ross, who has actually showed some mercy. But this dangerous precedent of these, that we might show some mercy when we have somebody who's engaged in literally criminal behavior in the form of our mayor.
Hello, I'm Marcy Lieber, and I live at 6624 Glencoe Drive and have for the last 43 years. I came here tonight to address the concerns arising from the discrepancies of the educational claims made by our mayor in her various endeavors. I do not intend to engage in bad behavior. I also do not have any aspersions to make concerning our mayor's abilities, personality. Everyone says she's a very nice person. I have no reason to believe that it be any different. All my interactions with her have been lovely. However, it's generally believed that if a problem occurs, the best way to handle it is to address it immediately. Communication can really settle problems that, if they are not addressed, can grow and grow and grow. And I think this is probably what happened here. I cannot express how thrilled I am that you explained to us, to the best of your ability, what happened, why it happened, and how this all played out. I just truly believe that if it had been addressed months and months ago, we would not, the city of Temple Terrace and many people, including myself, who have been very upset by all this that's been going on. And when I mention concerns, it's a great concern to many of us. Temple Terrace is our home. We raised our kids here. This is where we are. And when we see our city criticized, I have friends in Tampa that when I see them and they're like, oh, you live in Temple Terrace. Is that the truth? No, but it is the perception, and a lot of times perception is reality. So, as I said, I'm very, very pleased that you have finally addressed the issue. If there is any other issue that ever comes up, I would certainly hope that any of our city officials, anybody that is in the Temple Terrace, everybody, Temple Terrace citizens, staff, mayors, city councilmen, everybody, transparency is the answer. Burying your head in the sand is not the answer. It does not take, this is why we have come to the point we are at tonight. And I'm glad this is over. I'm glad the air is cleared. And now let's move on.
Mayor, council. Mayor, I don't feel sorry for you at all, and I'll tell you why. You've held up a lot better than I would. You're a lot more man than I am, I'll tell you that. I don't see how you could stand up there and take the bashing that you take without lashing out. But I admire you. I really admire you. I've worked alongside with you on some things. After hearing some of the comments made by the college degrees sitting behind me, I am so thankful I only got a high school diploma. And I'll be glad to tell you I barely made it. And I'll also be happy to tell you that I run a company that employs 170 people, and I created that company with my grandfather, and I'm proud as hell to be part of it. I wrote myself like 4 words to keep me focused. And the first word I wrote tonight was smiles. And the reason is because before the meeting started, I looked around, and at some point, I seen everybody smile, except that lawyer, and we know they don't ever smile. She just did. I just wanted to say, I'm just happy to see you guys. There seems to be a little bit more camaraderie than there was recently, and I'm just happy to see that even if y'all disagree, I beg of you to work together. This stuff of Dee standing on one side of the road and throwing rocks at ours is nonsense. We're all Americans, and I'm so sad that we have devolved to where we're at. There's not a bad person on that council. There's not a bad mayor. Even if you do make almost $300 a month, we expect a little more out of you, it sounds like. But my notes, I want to make a quick thing before I run out of time. To this council, to the mayor, to Charles. We last Friday started putting pallets in our new freezer that we built. It's 25,000 square feet. It's 5 pallets tall. It holds 3,972 pallets at our processing plant. And the Temple Terrace staff has been amazing to work with. And I want you to know it, because I was scared to death when I started this project. And I want to reach out from an economic development and blow the horn that Temple Terrace is ready to grow, ready to rock and roll, so to speak. And I would stand up and help anybody that wants to build here. I'm about to run out of time. Also, I think you ought to do something to get rid of that requirement to live in the city to be employed here. You're cutting out a lot of good employees. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council this evening?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Denny Kunak. I spoke here first on October 4th, October 16, I believe, introducing my credentials, and then on December 4th, adding on a few comments regarding diplomas and the value of paper as opposed to action and making things happen. It's been a pleasure to learn that the City Council recognizes what needs to be done here and what the purpose of those meetings is. And I appreciated the comments regarding the conduct in this room and talking on the subject rather than using personal vendetta to unload some, whatever problem it may be, onto those who have the burden of listening to it. So thank you, City Manager Stevens, for bringing this up. And thank you to the gentleman with the half degree here who made my day, because you are a walking, living proof of what life is all about, making things happen, not getting wrapped up into paper and diplomas and things like that. Okay, that doesn't go anywhere. With that in mind, let me just say that people are smart enough out there to recognize who is who, because we are what we do rather than what we say or what somebody says about us. And if you look around and realize that somebody comes here with the umbilical cord attached to a laptop and the first word out of that person's mouth is, I am Dr. So-and-so, then you may know who you deal with. And I'll leave it at that. Clinical psychologists, anthropologists, and all those specialists, with all due respect to their fields, it is everything looking backwards. You don't want to teach anybody driving an Indy 500 car with looking in the rearview mirror and trying to win. Clinical psychology, formerly called abnormal psychology, we don't have anything abnormal anymore, is a field that tells you it's all your fault. You are the square ball trying to fit a round hole. So you better get rid of your edges. Good. There is an article based on research published in 1973 in the magazine Science, conducted by a professor at Stanford by the name David Rosenhan, which is date and time when many of those people bashing here and complaining here and criticizing and shooting everybody down were not even born. And that article is entitled On the Sane in insane places. I strongly recommend for everybody interested to go on Google or wherever and read a thing, and you will be enlightened, okay? Who is going to tell you how to bring Temple Terrace to the future? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Koenig. If there is no one else to address council, we will move forward. Item 4A, a Municipal Code Enforcement Board lien reduction petition for the property located at 511 Caroline Street. Municipal Code Enforcement Board Chair Richard Schmidt will present the case. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members and staff. I'm here this evening to introduce the board recommendations for a lien reduction for the property located at 511 Caroline Street with a lien amount of $7,750. City versus Berkeley Capital in case number 17-1667. The case originated in August of 2017. The lien reduction request was presented to the board at the January 16th, 2019 board meeting by Director Baroni. At the time the property came into compliance, a fine amount had accrued in the amount of $7,750. After hearing from Director Baroni, the petitioner, Mr. Billy Tran, he's the new owner of the property, and board discussion, the board on a recommendation as presented by to the board by Director Baroni to reduce the lien from $7,750 to $800. By motion in a 6-0 vote, the recommendation to the council is for the lien to be reduced to $800, with the stipulation that the reduced lien amount be paid in full within 30 days of the council approval, or the lien amount will revert to the full amount of $7,750. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is the property owner present this evening?
Yes, he is.
And if he'd like to address this first, and
Would
then
you
we'll come
like to
back for
address?
questions.
Director Baroni is not here this evening. State your name.
Good evening, Mayor Jurado and council members. My name is Billy Tran, and I'm here for the property at 511 Caroline Street in Temple Terrace. I just want to say thank you to the City Council, the MCEB Board, and the Code Enforcement Department for considering to reduce the penalty amount for my violation. Thank you.
Are there members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Council, are there any comments or questions?
I just have a question. We seem to have a recurring problem with people not getting our mail. What happens when we send these certified letters? Don't they come back to
They
us?
have, if they're not not accepted or signed for, they come back to the city.
So then
This one isn't
Yeah.
from that particular
Well,
issue.
he indicated that his mail, he had moved to Texas and he wasn't getting the mail forwarded. I mean, they're all a little bit different, but we hear this over and over again.
yes.
So I don't know if there's another way to, a secondary contact or something. I'm just commenting. I'm willing to go along with the board's decision, absolutely, but that just seems to be something we hear a lot.
Well, it's one of the things that we hear in front of us each month too, when we have a lien reduction request. But this one originated as a foreclosure. The bank had it. They didn't do anything about it. And people are not always in their house, but the mail goes to the property that's on the records for the county, for the state.
Okay. Councilman Ross.
I just want to note, I'm not an attorney, but the state law prescribes how notification is to be made, and you really don't want to deviate from what the state law prescribes. So even to go over, you want to follow the way the law says. You don't want to, because if you go over, you've just upped the expectation on you did that to yourself. Now everybody else is gonna say, well, you didn't do that for me.
Okay.
Councilman Schisler.
Just as a curious question, how high was this grass after a solid year? I mean, that's, I'll support the recommendation, but I mean, it's neighbors and things. Why are we helping each other? Why are we doing some better things? Just, they're not there? I'm sorry, that just is a pet peeve with mine.
If council determines that the lien reduction is appropriate, we call for a motion to approve a lien reduction in case 17-1667, City versus Berkeley Capital LLC for the property located at 511 Caroline Street. Is there a motion?
I move to approve and accept the recommendation of the code board to reduce the lien to $800 contingent upon payment within 30 days, or it reverts back to the original amount of $7,750.
We have a motion from Councilman Ross. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye. Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, consent agenda, a resolution confirming the Police Pension Board elections. City Manager Stevenson will explain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have just a quick resolution. Consent Agenda 5A is a resolution before council this evening for confirming the selection of Detective Elmer and Detective Anderson to the Police Officers Pension Board of Trustees. In accordance with our Code of Ordinances, 2 members of the board shall be appointed by the police officers to represent the Police Pension Board. Both appointees shall serve from February of 2019 to February of 2021. Administration recommends the City Council approve this resolution.
Very good. Are there any persons of the public who wish to address council on this item? Seeing none, if the consent agenda is acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the appointment.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries. Continuing, 6A, a resolution authorizing Kimley Horn to provide services for the reconstruction of the sanitary sewer master lift station SA. Troy Tinch, Public Works Utilities Director, will present. Mr. Tinch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council. Troy Tinch, Public Works Utilities Director, and I'm here to get back to business. So I'm actually here tonight to seek approval for funding of the design for one of our master lift stations, Master Lift Station A. As I've explained previously in some of my presentations, those lift stations, we have 32 of them that are strategically located throughout the city. They're in the kind of lower areas within the city. They're designed to literally lift wastewater up out of those lower areas, pump it to an area where it can then gravity flow and potentially go through a series of those lift stations before it eventually flows out of our system. So of those 32 lift stations, we have 3 which are master lift stations. And these master lift stations are our direct connection from the city of Temple Terrace to the city of Tampa and the Howard F. Curran wastewater treatment plant. And those wastewater treatment plants are located in the southern part of the city. It'd be Lift Station B, which is in the peninsula down in Boy Scout Park. We have Lift Station SB, which is actually located on the Harney Canal adjacent to Harney Road. And we have finally SA, which is the lift station that I'm here to speak to you tonight about, and that is our master lift station located on Fowler Avenue. And it's in front of Raintree, the Raintree condominium, or condominiums. And that particular lift station is, being one of our master lift stations, is one that sees a quite large amount of flow. And as I explained previously, these lift stations are very mechanical in nature, lots of pumps, piping, wet wells, electronic boards, control features, so they have to be updated regularly. Well, this lift station was built in 1981. Standard lift station lifespan, design lifespan, is about 18 to 20 years. So we're double kind of the standard lifespan for that particular station. And it's more or less on life support at this point, to the point where we've actually reduced flow into that station. So it is critical and crucial we move forward with this design. Myself, my staff, we've worked very closely with Kimley Horn on a couple of other projects. We have a very good working relationship with them. We want to continue that. I look forward to working with them, hopefully on this project as well as any future projects. So we're moving forward. We need to get this station designed. It is in the CIP. It's in the CIP for actually design and construction this fiscal cycle. So as soon as we get that design completed, we can move into construction and get that station back online. So that said, staff recommends the city council approve the expenditure of $121,703.42 for design and reconstruction of Master Lift Station SA. The proposed work will be authorized as a task order under the existing general professional services agreement between the city and Kimley Horn. Funding for this effort has been budgeted in the Water and Sewer Utility Fund with an account number 430-3899-533.63-33. I will stand for questions.
And prior to questions, Mr. Tinch, I would ask if there are any members of the public who would like to address council on this item. Seeing none, I would ask council, do you have any questions? Councilman Ross, and then we'll go to Councilman Schisler.
Yeah, I just had a question about this. It seems like all of these things are the same, other than maybe the amount of pumpage and the amount of the diameter of the pipes or something like that. Why aren't these like boilerplate designs? Why can't we say, okay, we need a Class C lift station, and you just pull out the plan, well, here's the plans for why do we have to have a unique design for a lift station?
That's a very good question, Councilman Ross. And that is because each of these stations, these three master stations, do receive varied rates of flow. So the pumps are different sized, the horsepower of the motors are different sized, the wet wells are different sizes. So they are somewhat unique in each individual pump station. So the amount of flow that comes into that station differs potentially from the other, even the minor lift stations as well as the other master lift stations. So it does require us to go in and do specific design for each station. It would be nice if you could kind of cookie cutter set each station along the way, but flow rates and the amount of load on that system really dictate how it's designed. There are a lot of standards to how things are put together, but as far as the actual design itself, that has to be individualized for each station.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. How long has this been on the CIP list?
That's a very good question, and I don't know that I have the answer, but I could certainly find that out. I would say,
I'm sorry, it was somewhat rhetorical. It's been on there for as long as I can remember
greater
looking
than
at the
10 years.
budget. Well, I'm glad it's finally moving forward. And what is your confidence level of it actually turning dirt this year?
I would say that knowing what I know about the design team, they're very proactive and they really move things along. We've talked about some opportunities to streamline the process from design to construction. That window usually takes about 90 to 120 days to kind of churn it through the process. There are some opportunities for us to use existing piggyback contracts with other municipalities to streamline that effort, to actually go more or less from design into a construction phase and shrink that window. And if we can do that, we will absolutely be turning dirt before the end of this fiscal cycle.
Because I'd really like to get that one going. I've heard that for as long as I've been involved with any of the budgets. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Stevenson.
Mr. Schisler, it has been on the CIP for a long time. When I took over, they warned me that this is in dire need of being done. This is probably the worst lift station we have as far as conditions are concerned. At budget time, Mr. Tinch agreed emphatically to get this work done rather than carry it over to another year. So we're holding him to that commitment, because we told him, if you put it in the budget, you need to spend it.
Don't
We need to
misunderstand
spend
my-
it this year.
I'm sorry, don't misunderstand. My comment wasn't an indictment. It's just, yeah, we're finally getting this one done.
Absolutely.
Because that was a disaster.
No, thanks for reminding him.
That's
Yeah,
a disaster waiting to
And I
happen.
believe the mayor actually asked me that very same question whenever I presented all my CIP projects, that, are you actually going to get these done? Well, that's why I'm here, and I will be here next council meeting to ask for something very similar to this. So we're moving forward.
Thank you, Councilman Shalura.
Just real quick, in line with what you were saying. Just in line with what the discussion was taking place, Mr. Tinch, I really want to address my appreciation for the way you have led our city. I've been around here for some time, and your leadership, when I start to see these type of proposals, I start to cringe until I get down and say, it's budgeted. And between you and Mr. Stevenson, there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot of surprises. which, and that takes, expertise and planning and experience. So I just want to commend you, Mr. Stevenson, and the rest of the staff, because you guys make us look good. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, it's not just me, it's the team, the Temple Terrace team, and we're working hard to.
Funny surprises we give you.
No, we don't. It's good.
Let's hope not.
Well, and I will just comment, well done, Mr. Tinch. And
Thank
when we were blessed to acquire Mr. Tinch from another municipality who I have a close relationship with, they were very unhappy. But what they said is, this is a leader, and this is a team builder, and this is a man who, great new book out, Leaders Eat Last. That really describes Mr. Tinch.
Thank you.
So thank you. If acceptable, would entertain a motion of authorizing Kimley Horn to provide services for the reconstruction of the sanitary sewer master lift station SA.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, a second public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1468 for CPA number 18-04 located at 7860 Professional Place. The public hearing is now open. City Planner Mary Ann Abrahamson will provide us an overview.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present CPA 1804. There we go. This is the second public hearing and reading for 7680 Professional Place. The owner is MAH Tampa Investments. The applicant is WGI, who are here with us this evening. This property was annexed into the city November 5th, 2018. So this CPA, this future land use, is just in response to the recent annexation. The request is to change the future land use from CMU 12 in the county to industrial in the city. This property is located within the 301 industrial area. The Planning Commission found the request consistent with our comprehensive plan, and staff recommends that council approve ordinance 1468 for CPA 1804.
Are there members of the public wishing to comment on this item?
Oh, sorry.
Madam Mayor, City Council, Richard Reese, WGI. The applicant and myself are here to address any questions that the City Council may have about the project.
City Council questions? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. City Clerk, if you would please read the title of the ordinance 1468.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map for one parcel of land located at the southwest corner of Maslin Drive and Professional Place with an addressable location of 7860 Professional Place, consistent of approximately 4.13 acres, plus or minus acres, by changing the future land use designation on said property from Community Mixed Use 12, CMU 12, Hillsborough County, to Industrial in Temple Terrace for CPA 1804, providing for amendment to the official future land use map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1468.
Madam Mayor, I'll move staff recommendation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, item 6C, a second public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1469 for RZP number 18-05 for the property located at 7860 Professional Place. The public hearing is now open. City Planner Mary Ann Abrahamson will give a brief review.
Good evening. Again, this item is RZP 1805, second public hearing and reading. Same location, 7860 Professional Place. The owner is MAH Tampa Investments, applicant again, WGI. This is the same property as mentioned, located in the 301 industrial area, annexed into the city November 5th. The zoning request is to rezone from manufacturing in the county to light industrial in the city. The Planning Commission found this request consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the staff recommends that council approve ordinance 1469 for RZP 1805.
Are there members of the public wishing to comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, City Council, Richard Reese, WGI. Applicant and myself are here to address any questions you may have.
Are there any questions, council? Public hearing is now closed. If the clerk would please read the title of ordinance 1469.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 4.13 plus minus acres of land located on the southwest corner of Maslin Drive and Professional Place with an address of 7860 Professional Place from zoning classification manufacturer in Hillsborough County to light industrial in Temple Terrace for RZP 1805, providing for amendment to the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Council would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1469.
Move to approve ordinance 1469.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, a second public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1470 for RZP 18-06, property located at 8745 Overlook Drive. The public hearing is now open. City Planner Mary Ann Haberhamson will give a brief review.
Good evening. This item is RZP 1806, zoning reclassification for 8745 Overlook Drive. Again, second public hearing and reading. The applicant and owner is Joe Chaccio of Chaccio and Sons. This zoning request is to rezone from single-family residential R10 to planned development, allowing for commercial office and commercial general uses. As mentioned in the previous hearing, this location is in our community redevelopment area, and our code states that any rezone in the community redevelopment area must come in as a PD, and therefore that is the nature of this request rather than going straight to CG. The Planning Commission found the request consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends that council approve ordinance 1740 for RZP 1806.
Are there any members of the public that would like to address council? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Council, any questions? Seeing none, City Clerk, if you would please read title of ordinance 1470.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 0.31 plus minus acres of land located south of Bush Boulevard and east of Overlook Drive, with an address of 8745 Overlook Drive from zoning classification single-family residential 10, Temple Terrace, to planned development, Temple Terrace, for RZP 1806, providing for amendment to the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1470.
To adopt.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Council business, is there any carryover business from our previous meeting? Seeing none, new business?
I would just like to make a comment about tonight's meeting. Madam Mayor, you did a great job. You explained, you told everybody details. I have to say, that's exactly what people were hoping you would do. And the speaker who said she was relieved is exactly how I feel. Like I said in the beginning, I never had any doubt to your credentials or to your ability to do the job as mayor. I never had any reason to suspect that you did not have what you said you had. But once something like that starts, unfortunately, it festers. And as you can see, the citizens who did come week after week were angry. And democracy is messy. You can't tell people they can't speak. Now, you can tell them they can't stand up here and tell us we're incompetent or idiots or whatever. And yet, at every meeting, those comments are made. And I know they're made. And people in the audience know they're made. And they're made for other people to hear. And yet, we have taken on this job. We just have to deal with it. So sadly, I've never been approached or said anything that the degree that you have, unfortunately, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But I am relieved. I am happy that you have addressed it. And hopefully, as most people have said to me, if she would just say something, I would feel better. Hopefully, that's going to be the case. So I'm delighted that this has happened tonight. I don't know why the word delighted would come to mind, because this is, like saying I finally got rid of that wart. I'm glad it's gone, right? I was starting to get used to it, but no, this was not something any of us wanted to get used to. So I'm happy that hopefully this is the last chapter of this embarrassing situation for our whole city. So with that said, thank you.
Councilman Schisler.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I have a couple, three things I'd like to talk about tonight if I could. I'm going to start with a brief report from Hart. Last week, Heartline appointed a new executive director, CEO, excuse me, Mr. Ben Zimmer. He brings 15 years plus experience to Heartline, most recently with the MARTA in Atlanta, the Beltline of Atlanta, the Phoenix train system, and then, of course, Rapid Transit in Cleveland, Ohio. In my one-on-one interview with him last Thursday evening, he promised that he'd come take a tour of Temple Terrace with me, and I invite you to go along with us, Mayor, if that's at all possible. And we're going to take a look and see what the issues are within the city, particularly related to Heartline, and some of our peripheral communities, not just Temple Terrace proper, but there's some issues in north of Raintree that we need to address. So we're going to be doing that. It's in a contract negotiation stage. I don't anticipate this happening in the next maybe 30 to 60 days, but I will, and he wants to come address council. So as soon as this becomes possible, I will coordinate with Mr. Stevenson and get this on the proper agenda. If I may be indulged one more thing.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of sort of new kid on the block, but I've seen, heard and seen a lot of vicious attacks during the campaign. Even got sucked into them just because of who I was, association. But I'd like to reaffirm, I don't know if it's proper for this board to do that at this point, but to reaffirm our rules. When you come to council, don't come beating up on people. We don't beat up on anybody. We don't beat up on ourselves. And we should expect the same type of reaction from the public. I'll probably get grilled over the coals for this, but, Madam Mayor, never doubted you. Glad you spoke. It probably, hopefully, it'll put this whole issue to bed with them. I don't think it will, but hopefully it will. And I, for one, am just, let's get back to business. We got a big city. It's not a tremendous, it's a big city. Let's get it working. Let's get back to work on what we got to do. I hope that this never comes up again. Probably will, but I hope it doesn't. And I for one, hope we turn the page on this chapter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Ross.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'd just like to comment real briefly on this, and this is not about the current situation, Madam Mayor, with you, or this is not about city attorney or the city manager. I've seen a number of us, most of us sitting up here, have been subject to the derogatory remarks about something at some point. But while I am in favor of enforcing rules of decorum and requiring a certain measure, we can't have people cursing and personal attacks and yelling at each other and that kind of thing. Since I've been involved, we've only seen one person that's been escorted out of the council chambers for inappropriate behavior. While I find these things distasteful, and I do, that's the only part of this job that I really don't like, is I hate the petty bickering, I hate the little personal attacks, that's the only part of this that I don't mind reading 400 pages of backup material. I don't mind reading the fine print on contracts. I don't mind learning about lift stations and sewer pipes and pavement. I don't mind any of that. I joined up to do the work, and I like the work. I feel like we all bring value to the table. I absolutely hate the petty little agendas and politics and backbiting and bickering that happens. On the other hand, this is representative form of government, and this is a small city, and people have a right to come here and voice their frustration with whoever they want to voice it with, as long as they're doing it in an appropriate and legal manner and non-threatening, and then they can, how many times have we sat here for 2 hours while they go on about, wanting an ice cream shop when we all know that, we all know this, but it's the rights of the citizen to come here. And I find it distasteful. I find it miserable, unpleasurable. I don't like, no matter who it's directed at. It's not about protecting anybody in particular. I don't like it. But we can't pick and choose okay, we don't like that speech, so you got to leave. We're going to apply the rule against you because we don't like that speech. You just can't do that. I mean, I don't know how you draw a circle around that if it's not threatening and it's not cursing and it's not, you can't tell people what they can and can't say to their governing body. You just can't do it.
Yeah, it's messy.
I will just once again, in case anyone thought that I attempted to cut off any comment from the public, I was responding as the public asked me to respond. The push and the shove and the why didn't you speak earlier, I thought I answered. The maligners, the instigators, the people who put this into motion never wanted to hear the truth. And I know they didn't want to hear from me. So I knew that I had to back it up with the big boys. I could not easily pick up, I do not have personal relationships with a lot of people in the legal field. I was very delighted when I was led to a Chief Justice who got it under his bonnet and got pretty ticked off about this and was willing on January 16th to send documentation. I think I stated in my statement, our last previous meeting ahead of this was January 15th. I have expended thousands of dollars of my own money chasing back 30 years ago. I will always welcome public comment. I will not react. I will walk that back very quickly. My husband has heard me react over the last 3 months. And so I cannot lie to you. My husband has heard me react. My husband has seen tears and he has heard a raised voice. But that is not what the citizens of this city elected me to do. I will always try to conform my behavior in a way that allows citizens to be proud I represent you. I do take this role seriously. So those that want to continue to poke and malign and rant and rage, some say I have not been emotional enough. I don't think this is a position where one should be emotional. Thank you. Councilman Shalura.
Madam Mayor, I know it's late and we're all ready to get out here, but number one, I want to say I am extremely proud of you. I think you've handled yourself very, very well. I think you were brilliant in not to speak until you gathered all your facts. As clearly as you made it, that you've waited for all this information to come in, and it came in the day after the last meeting, 4 people spoke, and obviously they didn't hear that part of your comment because they wanted you to come out sooner. Well, you were smart you didn't come out sooner because you didn't have all the facts. You knew there were facts, but you had to present them with facts. Somebody told me this a long time ago, and they said, if you don't have the answer, go get the answer and come back if you're going to sit in public office. And that's exactly what you did. And I want to also commend this body for not getting in the mud and engaging the nonsense, because half of the comments made tonight are lies. And in my early tenure here, I probably would have addressed a couple of lies, but I've learned that less is better. Talk to yourself. Your biggest enemy is misinformation. And unless you have something and you've done something that's not appropriate and unethical, then take her to jail, or him, or whoever it is. Remove them. Actions speak louder than words. Unfortunately, there's a lot of words, and it's a lot of nonsense. We had 2 attractive rezonings this evening that came into our city. We talk about big things. This room's empty. It's staff and a couple of residents. But then all this nonsense comes along, and then you have all the naysayers. That's why it's difficult to get things off the ground in Temple Terrace. That's why. And unfortunately, the folks that were rezoning the property tonight, sitting in the 2nd and 3rd row, saw this nonsense. That's what happens in small-town communities. I would like to ask that in the future, we have the flexibility to address 3-minute comments, maybe after the 3-minute discussion. And here's why. I'll give you a perfect example. When the folks with the Airbnb first came up a month ago, they spoke about it. Nobody said a word. They probably left saying, well, they don't care. Well, at least we have to say something to them. Hey, the mayor or somebody, maybe the city manager, hey, stick around, we'll discuss this later. Or if it's a long agenda, maybe we discuss it at that point. To some degree, we can't get carried away. But I think it's frustrating for folks to get up and speak. I have a problem, a concern. Thank you. Goodbye. And they walk away. Just a thought. I'm not.
Well, I agree with you, and I think in our last meeting, Mr. Stevenson, and I do believe Mr. Stevenson is the correct person, because right now with public comments, we direct them to Mr. Stevenson, especially if anything is going to go to his staff. I know I regularly see department heads jump up and grab people before they can get out the door if there's an answer. But Mr. Stevenson and I have had this discussion, and if there are things, and thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Shalura, I don't think it's ours to get into a give and take back and forth during public comment. But I think Mr. Stevenson, tonight, just as Ms. Donahue did a couple months ago, tonight it was important. People were asking for a response, and unfortunately, the folks who have, I don't know a nicer way to say it, rant, rage, and walk out the door. So I haven't had an opportunity to answer them. And again, I wasn't going to answer them until I had all of the documentation. Any other?
But,
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Shalur and then Councilman Ross.
And I agree with what Mr. Ross said, that there's a very fine line. I get the direction that Mr. Stevenson had stated earlier, that, you have to shut it down. But unless somebody's up here cursing you, you really can't, you got to give them their 3 minutes. I don't like the jacket you got on. Okay, great, have it, too bad for you. I mean, you have to give them their 3 minutes. I think if you start shutting them down at that point, then we have a bigger problem on our hands. If somebody's ugly and cursing and threatening, different story. The police chief's sitting in the back, and he's more than happy to remove somebody if the need arises. But with that, whether it's appropriate or not, I want to make a motion, and that my motion is going to be, I want to make a motion of confidence for Mayor Jurado, representing the city of Temple Terrace.
Here's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you, Councilman Shalura. Thank you all very much. Is there any other new business?
I just had a comment about the engaging at the 3-minute thing. I've thought that too, because it's frustrating for us, because sometimes we have something that we could easily set their questions to ease. The danger to that, in talking this around a little bit to some other people with other cities and stuff, the danger is we're kind of have the protection of a rule now, and we don't get drawn into stuff because we can't, and we can not hide behind, but we can use the rule as to say that we can't engage it. If we put a hole in that fence, now all of a sudden we get drawn into something, we never get to our agenda.
Well, and I believe probably the safe point there is deferring to our city manager.
Yeah.
As a body, we're to act as a body, vote as a body, and be one voice in the community. So if any one of us jumps in with opinions, or again, a back and forth, you're exactly right, Councilman Ross, we open ourselves up. But to defer to the city manager, who operates and runs this city day in and day out. And again, City Manager Stevenson is very good about doing this when he has something to say, when he knows that there is a quick answer and a correct response. Very oftentimes, there is additional research that needs to go into it, because we do want to make sure whatever we inform our citizens of is right and true and tight. We'll go to Councilman Donahue, and then we'll go to Councilman Chambers.
Yeah, I just want to remind us that when people come, they go to a lot of trouble to come here and say whatever their issue is. And yes, absolutely, we should not be addressing it. But maybe we need to either bring it up at the next meeting, or as soon as there's some resolution, or at least that a meeting has occurred and they're working on it. Because otherwise, the average citizen who only knows about what's going on by watching this show, this performance, this television, otherwise they don't know that anything was ever addressed. We've had different issues where the people, sometimes they're willing to come back again and again and again, but sometimes it looks like we just said, thank you, your house is on fire, somebody will take care of it. You know, I just, there needs to be one more little piece that lets people know that it has been addressed. So, and absolutely, I love it when the directors follow them out of the room, but we see that happening. The general audience doesn't know that that's happened. So just somehow, if you could add it in, follow-up of some kind, I think that would help people
Council,
watching.
thank you,
And
Councilman
also,
Chambers.
I mean, when we start public comment, you read your disclaimer, and it very clearly in the disclaimer talks about the items are noted and addressed by the city manager or council. And we also have the ability to bring it up under new business. If we hear anything at public comment, we can bring it up that night in new business, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's usually 2 hours later, so it's long.
Many of them are gone.
And the only rationale for why we might not bring it up under new business, especially if it's a hot potato, there are really issues that if we fail to have something on the agenda, we take away some of the citizen input. So if something is addressed and brought up that night on, you know, I want a cat park, I want a dog park, I want all cats banned from the city. If we bring it up under new business, immediately that night without a proper agenda, it stifles the citizen input. So I think we're pretty good about disciplining ourselves there. And again, I would absolutely defer to City Manager Stevenson as the right person to, if there's an immediate answer, I think the last couple months you've been employing that to actually address items.
We actually started at the first of the year, trying to respond to 3-minute comments from previous meetings, not only to provide accurate information when something is inaccurately depicted, but at the same time, in order to provide council with some kind of background of what somebody's asking for. There's nothing that prohibits you from asking it in new business and giving me some direction either. So it is, we've always followed suit with 3 minutes that if there's a response, like this evening with the TICO issue, I just happen to know that I had that conversation before, and I don't mind interjecting what I know, but we can certainly follow up with it some more. We'll put it on the list to get back with council next meeting, so. And unless it's something, if it's something of an emergency basis, we'll try to reach out to you before the next meeting, so. But that is kind of a change in routine for my staff, so we'll follow suit with that.
Thank you. Is there any additional new business? We will go to the city manager's report. Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got just a few items here, just to kind of clean up some business. As a reminder, Ms. Allison Fernandez was before us talking about a parent outreach meeting, the 12th of February, which is next week. It is a short notice. We just found out last night that this meeting is going to happen, but it talks about the Greco boundaries for those people listening, and we're going to try to help the school board advertise this so that we can get some engagement from parents. That's where the engagement needs to come from, not our staff, and certainly not from council members. The parents have got to get involved, and hopefully they come out and listen to some of the stuff that the school district is promising with Greco and the boundaries and the program, so on and so forth. So if I can ask the general public that if you've got children that are outside or currently don't go or are assigned to Temple or Greco Middle School, there are some changes coming, and I would certainly implore them to get engaged. So that's February 12th. I've given council a copy of a letter that I drafted to Mr. Fabry with the Richmond Group. And before I send that letter to him committing to some credits that we have come up with water and sewer, which are typical credits that we give people for existing water and sewer connections and meters on property that is transferred from one person to the other. It amounts to about $266,000. Greg Pauley has worked diligently to get this number together. It is a good number. The other departments that have been involved with customer service and the water and sewer department, so on and so forth, all in agreement that this is a good credit to give them. I think so as well. Before I send this letter, I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that we're giving that credit out. We've run some calculations, and with the water usage that we're looking at in the project, you're probably about 2 years out from making all this money back. So although we're giving them a substantial credit, there was substantial improvements already in place. And I just wanted to make sure that council knew that I was sending this letter out before I did. So, we're talking about the rules and procedure, and one of the things that I'd like to propose here in putting together this week's agenda, we have, traditionally, we've got, as our rules and procedure outline currently, we've got recognitions, proclamations, presentations, and board appointments, all in one category. I'd like to suggest to council that we break that up into 2 categories. Typically with board appointments, there's action taken by council in the form of some kind of vote. I think it'd be appropriate to segregate that board appointments out into its own group. Now, that being said, we had 7 items here tonight. I think separating them into 2 business items would probably be appropriate. So if that is the wish of council and I get a nod, we'll go back, we'll put a resolution together to change the rules and procedures.
I just have one question about that, if you don't mind, Mayor. We also had a presentation that we might have asked a couple of questions about that survey, but because of where it was, we didn't engage. So can we pull those out as well, or do they belong in presentation? I mean, I understand that they brought us something, but we never have the chance to ask them a question because of where it is. And that's happened several times to other speakers, so.
I agree with that, because there's been several presentations where I've got a list of questions, and I'm
Right.
like, okay, we don't get to ask
And
questions.
then you don't get to ask, so, and they're gone.
It is your
I don't blame
agenda.
'em.
You tell me what you want done with it, we'll get it done. Well, we can break out presentations and board appointments. There's no rhyme or reason why we can't make the order of business, anything you want. So,
I mean, there are going to be many of them that we don't have a question on, right? They're just telling us. But quite a few of them, you would, I mean, I wanted to know tonight, did they know how Hillsborough was going before the election? Because, when you look at how Hillsborough County voted and the survey, they look alike. They're all in for, light rail and all kinds of alternative transportations, and then they voted that way too. So, of course, she may, I don't know what the answer was.
we can propose that as well, and some changes to the rules and procedure, and I don't think it'd be inappropriate. So, and I agree with you, because there's sometimes, I see these presentations for the first time as well. So, it
Well, some of
does
them are
kind of
really
create some questions for me as well. It's like,
high-level presenters, when you have the new CEO of the Heart coming to us, we should be able to say something, welcome. or
well,
something.
we've also got presentations from schools. You know how
Yeah.
engaged we are with schools, and
Right.
sometimes you want to ask them about maybe a program that you heard about. So I don't know that it would be inappropriate to do. We could try it.
We can try.
Doesn't work, we change it. So, I got a nod from everybody? Got to put something together?
Absolutely. Please do so.
No, yeah?
Yeah.
You just got to be careful with those discussions that all of a sudden the meeting doesn't,
And that is the concern. If a presentation turns into an agenda actionable idea, then you're subverting citizen participation. That's
Well-
the reason per parliamentary procedure, presentations are what they are. So
And a
I'm
lot of times-
open to it, but if we start getting into actionables, we are,
I think that has to be at the mayor's discretion. If he or she feels that it's getting a little bit prolonged, then, hey, we're going to pick this up at the end of the meeting. So with all due respect for the folks in the audience, we can
Yes.
continue with our agenda.
Yes.
So maybe there's a little flexibility there where she can.
In some of the presentations, we don't really need to be asking a lot of
Right.
questions. This one, the big ones, the planning commission, those kinds of things, those are the ones that
Makes sense.
I would think probably in most of the presentations that you see, you're probably not going to get an answer right away anyway, if you do have a question. I mean, the presentations are put together by PowerPoint by staff.
Yeah.
They may not even have an answer for you, but certainly you can trigger a question to them, but we can try it.
When the Arts Council comes here to tell us about Art and Blanc, the only question we're going to have is, where do I get a ticket, right? You know, so I mean, but if somebody like the Hart chairman coming here, you know. Yeah.
Does that conclude your, oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to ask Mr. Stevenson, are you going to be able to have a way, or maybe there is, are they going to notify, this changing the boundaries of the schools is huge. I mean, most people don't watch, they don't realize, currently Greco goes from the Hillsborough River all the way to 40th Street. They're going to take that boundary and move it back, so it picks up all of Rolling Terrace, all of the Temple Terrace proper boundaries. So the folks that are currently not in the Greco district, are they being notified?
They're actually receiving communication. Emails are going out today. Robocalls are going out today. All the parent portals on how parents are communicated to in the district, they're being notified. Again, this is, I went over it very quickly earlier, but this is a decades-long request that our students be in our boundaries. And as we sat with Mr. Akins and Chris Farkas on Friday, it's even taking care of the little nuances, should I say, in Raintree, that this block is City of Temple Terrace, this block isn't. We want kids who play across the street from each other to be able to be in the same school together. We actually also went back and looked at the new swatch that's going to be annexed in, and that will be included. So our Temple Terrace middle schoolers are all going to be assigned to Greco, and that's something that citizens for 10 years have asked for. I see a school support staff member here tonight, Carol Dell. The school support committee has been working on it. That is a done deal. The next items to look at is what will be that focus going forward to turn around that troubled school. And we've been assured that STEM focus will remain very strong. And then in addition, we could be the first community that would have an IB elementary, an IB middle, and an IB high school. And we would be the only community in the district to have that designation. So that, there are some very positive things going forward. And I want to thank Mr. Stevenson because he probably spent more time with me than he wanted to in the last week. But we've had 4 different, rather intensive and long meetings
It was a
with
pleasure.
school board members. Does that conclude your report?
As long as I don't let you drive, I'm okay.
As long as you tell us about Touch-a-Truck.
If you've ever driven
Very
with Mel,
concerned that my
she's got
husband
a
was
heavy
the
foot.
first one to laugh.
I'm sorry.
Touch-a-Truck. It's the only thing you have written down.
No, I've got just two quick other things. There's a copy from the county clerk's interrogatories that came out of the lawsuit that the county's got. I gave you guys a copy of that. That is a hypothetical dispersion of funds based on $100 million collected. Take it for what you need. That's just for your edification somewhere down the road. They're still trying to work all that out. There's nothing we need to share with council for any update. Carl, if I can ask Carl to come up to the podium. We've got Touch-a-Truck coming up. I'll let him invite everybody.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Hopefully wrapping up this meeting on a lighter note. This Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the redevelopment area is our annual Touch-a-Truck event, which is a fantastic family event that is well attended every year. I want to thank Public Works, Police, Fire for their participation, Target and Tico for their sponsorship. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming out with a skills challenge for the kids. M&B Products will be out there. Heartline will be out there. Many different groups, Suncoast RV, the Bloodmobile, the Hillsborough County Bookmobile will be out there. Lots of things for families to do, lots of things for kids to do. Food trucks for lunch. So please come out and join us. It's going to be a beautiful day and a great event. So thank you.
Thank you.
And one last thing, Madam Mayor, I appreciate you finally making a statement. I know that that was difficult for you to do. We have always supported you, and our staff has always supported you. We will continue to do that. I'm real proud of what you've done. You are an asset to this community, and you're one heck of a mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there any additional business to come before this body? If not, meeting adjourned.